Hello, we are back with another review. This time we're going to be reviewing Beasts of Extraordinary Circumstance by Ruth Emmie Lang. And I will tell y'all how I was introduced to this book first. I had just gotten my wolf tattoo, and this lovely lady that I work with, she's so mysterious and fantastical. She came up to me and she was like, "Do you want to read a book about a magical wolf?" And I said, "Of course, I want to read a book about a magical wolf." And the very next day, this book was on my desk. And I will always appreciate this woman for making my work life the most interesting. And uh, full disclosure, I usually don't read physical books that often. I more read audible books or listen to audible books. But I am so glad that I read this in record time because it is such a wonderful, fantastic book. I was trying to find the words for it. I didn't want to use fantasy because it is a fantasy book. Anyway, so Beasts of Extraordinary Circumstances is listed as a fantasy realism book. It's like 300 plus pages. It goes by pretty fast. And honestly, it's one of the best books I ever read. It is centered around a man or boy, starts off as, named Waylon Gray. The perspective of the book is from all the people that knew him over his life. And you not only get to know the main character, who's Waylon Gray, who's magical in and of himself, but you get to know the ordinary, I guess, circumstances of many people that he encounters throughout his life. And I feel like that's where the book shines. Um, I'm gonna get into a lot more detail on this book than I did my other previous books. So if you're willing, buckle up, pull up a coffee, pull up a coffee, grab some coffee, and chill with me. So I wanted to highlight some of the people that Waylon encounters, and one of the first people that he encounters is Mary Penelope, also known as Mary J. And with all good stories, if you're a Spider-Man fan, there's always a Mary J that is swooping in and making us fall in love with her. But before Mary J becomes a woman, she is a girl, and we get to know her backstory. She has a mother and father. Her mother passes away very suddenly and leaves her, Mary J, and her father um, behind in the living world. And the father is like a mousy person. He doesn't really know the words to say to his daughter. He views his daughter, who is like less than 10, as a strong person. I think because he wants to view her as that, because he himself is not too strong, especially after losing his wife. So the story depicts him as this man who is loving and he has the thoughts where he says the right thing, but when he opens his mouth to say, for example, "I love you" to his daughter, or "I'm proud of you," or "I was scared for you," or "I was worried about you," instead, it's very concise statements, 1 to 2 word answers. And the daughter, Mary J, feels estranged from her father for the longest time. We get to peer into this gentleman's heart, and he reacts to things in songs because he realizes, or his character arc is that he can only have the thought of things but doesn't express them out loud. And if he does express them, he expresses them in song because he never uses the right words, but he uses song lyrics because he's memorized them to try to communicate his feelings, at least to himself, in a muttering way. I thought this character, even though he wasn't the main character, he was just a passing by character that didn't really matter in the grand scheme of the plot, but just viewing him and his issues of not being able to communicate, even to his daughter who he loved. I feel like that's so real. Like we look at a lot of our parents and especially our dads. Not saying that fathers are not some of the best out there. But I know for myself, my father is not one for good words. But I know that he loves me in the way that he can. And so I love the fact that Miss Lang was able to depict a father figure in this book who loved his kid, but didn't do all the things right, didn't say all the right things, but still showed his point of view, even if it was passing. It really resonated with me. So I don't want to recant the whole book, but we do start off with meeting Waylon in the forest, spending time, all of his time, living with wolves after the tragic death of his family. That's where Mary J finds him. He's out in the middle of nowhere, um, being a part of a pack of wolves and occasionally interacting with humans. Mary J's father, as I mentioned before, is a butcher, and Waylon uses his family's emergency savings to buy meat for the wolves because meat is scarce in the forest. And so he uses everything he owns um, to buy them food until it runs out. But Mary J and Waylon get to spend this time together. And we find in the book later how important that time was for Waylon. Eventually, Waylon does leave the pack, not by choice. His wolf mother, the head of the pack of wolves, was tragically killed by a farmer. And Waylon is eventually adopted by the Kramers. The father, Mr. Kramer, is a preacher, and his wife is no less than a diva. And they have all girls, and none of them really accept Waylon except for Lydia, who accepts Waylon as a brother. I'm not going to go too much into the Kramer story because I feel like that is a fantastic little snippet of the life of a preacher who has a wife, who is a housewife, who is very controlling but submissive at the same time. Read the book, I'm trying to tell you. But the interesting thing about it is that he gains a foster mother thereafter named Meg Laurie. And Meg Laurie takes Waylon in after the Kramers reluctantly have to give Waylon up, and she spends 5 years with Waylon. And, you know, I don't want to give too much on her backstory, but it really made me cry how she wanted kids, was married to someone who did not want kids, and she ended up leaving him, getting a divorce, living on her own, meeting Wailing, falling in love with the little boy. And she said in the book, like, Wailing gave her 5 years as a mother before he turned 18 and went away. And I was like, that is so touching because, when we think of parents, we think of the biological parents, but really, our families are the loved ones that we have along the way, the friends, the people that we fall in love with, um, platonically. It doesn't always have to be romantic, but that really makes up our community, and it's very important. And I actually have a quote because I'm nerding out over this book. I have it also. It, it's a philosophy that, let me see, that Waylon actually said. He says, "Don't cry over don't cry over the same thing twice. Get it all out the first time. even if it's loud and messy, then it's over. And I feel like all of us need to follow that philosophy because we be perseverating. Let me speak for myself. I be perseverating on certain things. And honestly, it's better to let things go. One thing that I love about the character Waylon is that, he's this magical being, and his magic is not really defined in the book. It's more the circumstances that he is around that obviously comes from him, but it's not like, Harry Potter wizardry. He waves his hand or magic wand and these magical things happen. Or he doesn't even have a training arc where he builds up his magic. He himself is magical. And you would think that would make him like this godly figure in this book, but really he's presented as this real person who makes mistakes, is scared, um, falls in love, doesn't always say the right thing, but he genuinely lives and he tries his best not to uh, bring hatred into the world, and he tries his best to do the right thing. And I really appreciate that about this book because, against your better judgment, when you see the title, you're thinking that you're going to encounter these overly like dramatic scenes, and you kind of do. They are fantastic. I'm gonna give nothing away. I feel like I gave some of the emotional things away, but I do not want to give away the magic. Um, but that's not all to the character of that sorry. That's not all there is to the character of Waylon Gray. He is more than that. He is all of us, trying to live, trying to find himself, trying to honor his real self, and also honor the fact that he wants to be with humans, but he is deep down a wolf. And I honestly give this book a 10 out of 10. It's well written. It's a good quick read because I work full time and I was able to read this in 2 weeks. And honestly, I was struggling to read it because I'm just so busy, but I'm so glad that I finished it and I really do recommend it. So until next time, guys, stay well and happy reading.